Катя, сейчас Андрей Всеволодович войдет, можно его сделать организацию? Или, в принципе, не знаю, как лучше сейчас я
Да,
попробую
без
войти.
проблем. Тут можно сделать и вас, и его.
Ага, чтобы он мог расширить.
Ну, я разрешила всем, кто угодно может делиться экраном.
Кто может угодно, да? Сейчас, когда он входит, сейчас, минуточку, понятно. Ну все, давайте начинаем. Вот она конференция.
Это мой, да? А кто надо еще делать?
А у тебя зарядка нормальная?
Ну, меня не начинает.
Сколько?
54.
Ну, 54 нормально.
Ну, пока. आदरणीय कलीग्स, उम्मीद है कि सब लोग तैयार हैं, भी तो शुरू कर रहे हैं. Dear participants, we are going to start. We're going to start our afternoon section, and this section is dedicated to Sanskrit linguistics and literature. And the first speaker today is Dr. Ganesh Umakant, who is from Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute, Pune, India. He will speak about commentaries with a special reference to Ānandavardhana. So you're welcome to present.
Please remove this. I don't want it. I'm going to read it.
लेकिन ये लोग आपको देख सकेंगे ऐसे, ठीक है?
Okay. Can you hear me? So, before I start my paper reading, I would like to thank the organizers, particularly the RUDN-University from Russia and this Department of Sanskrit and Sanskrit Center in the University of Pune. Yes. I would like to mention one point that in 2018, I had contributed a paper on contribution of Russian scholars to Sanskrit studies in the seminar which was held in Moscow. And at that time, I had some opportunity to read the literature and some of the books connected with Indology contributed by Russian scholars. Now, today's my paper is on Ānandavardhana. Ānandavardhana is a famous name in the field of poetics, and he has his own philosophy, and his philosophy is very much important in the history of Sanskrit poetics. So, I am going to highlight some of the important points in the philosophy of Ānandavardhana in the field of poetics. So now I start my paper reading. In this paper, it is intended to restate the main principles of criticism given by Ānandavardhana in his Dvanyaloka. Since the work and its contents are very well known, it is not necessary to go into the details of all the literary principles of criticism given by Ānandavardhana. The main intention behind this paper is just to emphasize the contribution of Ānandavardhana to this field and also to evaluate Ānandavardhana's position as a critic in the history of Indian philosophy. While the history of Sanskrit poetics is full of works on the details of poetics and varieties and sub-varieties of topics like alankar, that is the embellishments. It is Ānandavardhana who directly deals with the principles of criticism and evaluates two great epics in Sanskrit, namely Ramayana and Mahabharata. The most significant principle of criticism suggested by Ānandavardhana is that of auchitya, that is propriety or appropriateness. The word auchitya has been used by Ānandavardhana in the context of gunas, the gunas are closely connected with the rasas. And Ānandavardhana says, Tanyame hetuhu auchityam. Thus, the application of a particular guna in connection with certain description is appropriate or not. The gunas are closely associated with rasas. In this context, Ānandavardhana says, Tanyame hetuhu auchityam vaktruvachayoho. Thus, the application of a particular guna depends upon the propriety based on the speaker and the contents of the speech. Thus, although a particular guna has to be used in a particular rasa, still this rule is to be modified on the basis of the speaker or the meaning of his speech. Thus, in the verse, Yo yaha shastram vibharti, etc. Here, there is a Raudra rasa, and therefore, Ojas guna is expected there. This guna consists of long compounds, but still there are no long compounds in this verse. So there is a prasada guna in this verse. This guna indicates clarity. Moreover, this guna is all pervasive, so it can be in any rasa. Therefore, it is appropriate here. Further, Ānandavardhana says that the word auchitya is very important. It refers to the propriety based upon the subject matter also. And he refers to the compounds both in the metrical as well as in prose compositions. Further, we are told that the appropriateness is closely related to rasa. Thus, one has to discriminate in connection with the meaning of poetry, and accordingly, use of style either consisting of long or short compounds. In this connection, Ānandavardhana claims that this discrimination has been pointed out by him for the first time. Thus, he uses here the expression asmad upajnaha, which indicates that this concept is his own idea and very original one. Thus, the concept of auchitya and that of discrimination based upon auchitya or propriety can be described to be an original contribution of Ānandavardhana himself, and we must acknowledge this. In the later period, Kshemendra wrote a separate treatise, namely Auchitya Vichara Charcha, and developed the concept of propriety, but the credit of original thinking goes to Ānandavardhana. By way of extension of the thought about Auchitya, Ānandavardhana prescribes the rule about application of sandhis and sandhingas, that they should be used only in accordance with the development of rasa and not merely for the sake of following the rules of Natya Shastra. In other words, the author has to follow the spirit of the rules rather than the letter of them. The clarity of vision in connection with poetry makes Ānandavardhana a great critic. He rightly tells poets that poetic embellishments or alankaras should be used by a poet in accordance with the propriety of rasa, even though the poet may have the ability to use them. Here the word anurupya is used, and it is almost synonymous with the word auchitya. He further says that impropriety, that is anauchitya, leads to destruction of poetic pleasure. On the other hand, to accept propriety is the highest secret of poetic pleasure. He thus describes the propriety of the description of love of gods, kings, and common village people also. In this context, even the great poets like Kalidasa, describing the love sports of gods like Shankara and Parvati in the 8th canto of Kumar Sambhava, is said to be defective by Ānandavardhana. It is, however, not possible to be detected because of poetic ability of the poet, namely of Kalidasa. It is well known that Ānandavardhana considers dhvani or implied meaning as the sole or the essential factor of poetry. In the very first verse, he has said this, Kavyasya Atma Dhvanihi. Then he has not only explained the dhvani theory in details, but also evaluated poetry on the basis of dhvani, that is, implied meaning. Thus, the poetry in which we get implied meaning, that is the best poetry. There, where the implied meaning becomes subordinate, it is middle class status poetry. And the poetry where there is no implied meaning at all, but only brightness on account of meaning of sound, that should be considered as the inferior type of poetry. This vertical division of poetry and its guiding principles are clearly mentioned by Mammata in his Kavya Prakasha also. Although Ānandavardhana has not mentioned this evaluation in his work, he has implied and he has given inspiration to Mammata to state it clearly. Thus, Ānandavardhana can be mentioned to have given the principles of criticism and evaluation of poetry, and thus has developed the science of criticism in a substantial manner. It may, however, further be noted that Ānandavardhana gives the highest importance to rasa or emotional pleasure, which is also a part of dhvani. He has stated in clear terms that this rasa type of dhvani is the superior most concept, and the poet is expected to develop rasa in his poetry. Thus, rasadhvani is the most important in poetry, and having taken the leadership of Ānandavardhana, Vishwanatha, another poetician, defines poetry with the words Vakyam Rasatmakam Kavyam, and he gives the highest importance of emotional descriptions in poetry. And he calls rasa as the soul of poetry. And thus, according to Vishwanatha, rasa is the most essential part of the definition of poetry. Thus, Ānandavardhana has not only given inspiration to the other critics of poetry by giving principles of poetic criticism, but has also established the most essential factor in poetry and also that of evaluation of poetry, namely rasa. The question associated with all the discussion on poetic criticism is ultimately who is the real enjoyer or appreciator of poetry, and whose pleasure is considered to be the decisive factor in the evaluation of poetry. The clear answer to this question is a person who is called Sarudaya, which literally means one with heart, that is a converser. The word Sarudaya is often used by Ānandavardhana, and he mentions Sarudaya as the person who is the real enjoyer of the poetry. So, Sarudaya is he who knows the rules of poetry irrespective of rasa. But the alternative is not supported by Ānandavardhana. According to the other alternative, the Sarudaya is the same as the skill, understanding, full of rasa. It may be noted here that there is a vicious circle. Thus, the beauty of poetry is that which is known or appreciated by a Sarudaya, and Sarudaya is he who can know or who can understand the beauty which is the same as poetic pleasure. But this vicious circle is not noted here. In any case, Ānandavardhana has given one more criterion of poetry, that is worthiness of being appreciated by Sarudayas. He has also stated that just as the examiners of gems alone can know the greatness or the gemness of gems, similarly, it is the Sarudayas who know what is the poetic pleasure in the poems. Thus, Ānandavardhana has given 3 principles of literary criticism. 1, Dhvani in general and Rasa in particular. 2, Auchitya or propriety. And 3, being worthy to be enjoyed or appreciated by Sarudayas, that is connoisseurs. Next, he also considers that the doctrine of Dhvani is dependent upon the readers, and he gives a lot of importance to the doctrine of Dhvani. Finally, in the 4th chapter of his work, he establishes himself as a great critic, and here he evaluates the great poems, namely Ramayana and Mahabharata. He says that in Ramayana, it is the Karuna Rasa, which is the pathetic emotion, which is the most important. And on the other hand, in Mahabharata, it is the Shanta Rasa or pacification that is the most important part of the poetry. In this way, Ānandavardhana has not only given the principles of criticism, but also he has made the application of them in connection with Ramayana and Mahabharata. That is how the philosophy of Ānandavardhana is very much important in the history of Indian poetics, and therefore a due credit should be given to him. So thank you very much for your patient listening. If there are any questions, we can discuss.
Thank you very much for your groundbreaking presentation. And if anybody has questions, both here in the audience, you can ask. Maybe it's better if you come here so that the audience will hear you.
Yes. Professor, I have a question. As a serious theoretician, Ānandavardhana produced a theory that can be applicable not only to his material, that is the classical Indian poetry, but has some universalist trends. For example, one can apply it to Persian poetry or to European poetry, but to what extent, what aspects of his theory belong purely to the Sanskrit literature and what are universal?
In Sanskrit poetry, the importance is given to poetic imagination and that which is called rasa or enjoyment in the form of emotions. So this is a peculiar aspect of Sanskrit poetry only. In other literatures, there are some other qualities which are considered to be more important and not necessarily the description of emotions. So Sanskrit contribution of Ānandavardhana is mainly connected with the rasa theory, and from that point of view, we have to evaluate his contribution.
You see, I think the situation is even better because knowing this theory and also the Abhinavagupta's commentary,
Yes.
I tried to apply this theory to European material. And for example, it can be proven that the typical plot of the classical French tragedy of the 17th century is the conflict between Shringara Rasa and Utsaha Rasa. And certainly we can also some classical operas in Italian style can be analyzed in this way as the very exclusive connection of different races. So I think it is almost universal. What rests peculiar for the Sanskrit are some style applications. For example, the Gauḍīya style with long samases has no correspondence neither in Persian poetry nor in European poetry, but rasas can, I think.
Yes, because long compounds is a peculiarity of Sanskrit and Indian languages only. So this peculiarity can be found even in later Indian languages like Prakrit or Pali, or even modern languages like Marathi, Hindi also. There were some poets who have composed poetry in which long compounds. But long compounds are not used in other languages in other parts of the world. Now, as far as the tragedy is concerned, according to Indian way of thinking, although one can describe the pathetic conditions, no drama or no story should end in tragic manner. So at the end, it should be happiness only.
It is yes, but it is normative, not it is not description. But using this theory as a description, I can find this in French tragedy and other.
Even in Ramayana also, the main rasa is Karuna, that is pathetic descriptions. Yeah. Ultimately, Uttar Ramcharita, the story has been changed, and ultimately it has been shown that Rama and Sita, they are united again, and the drama ends happily.
Yes.
So the theory of tragedy doesn't apply to Sanskrit drama or Sanskrit
certainly, but every good theory is applicable wider than to this initial object, and Ānandavardhana is a good theory.
Yes, that is, of course, there is no difference of opinion regarding this, but there are limitations. It is mainly connected with Sanskrit poetry, but it can be used to some extent in connection with the other poetries of other countries, but not 100%.
Certainly, yes.
So these are the limitations of this theory, that it is mainly because he has not taken into consideration any other literature in other countries. Mainly, he might have seen some Prakrit and Pali literature, of course, Sanskrit literature, but he might not have gone to Persian literature or even other Latin or Greek literature at all. So he might not have thought about that literature at all.
Certainly, but he didn't know of their existence, but he thought, well,
they are free.
Yes.
If we are studying Latin literature or Greek literature or even some other literature, German or French or Russian, we can apply partly the theory of Ānandavardhana or other critics in Sanskrit poetics, the theory of, for example, Vishwanatha also can be applied to some extent, but not fully.
Yes, thank you.
Can I ask a question, please? Hello, do you hear me? Can I ask a question?
Namaste, sir. It was a very good observations that you have made with respect to Ānandavardhana's contribution to poetic theory. But I have some point to make, and also I agree to differ with you on the point that you told just now, while answering to the first question, that his contribution is the rasa theory. If the rasa theory is the contribution of Ānandavardhana, then what is the contribution of Natyashastra to Bharata? Rasa comes only as a type of dhvani. The beauty lies in the concealment. This is the universal principle of Ānandavardhana, and which is very good, and which lies at the secret of rasa theory, I think. And therefore, the rasa theory is the contribution of Natyashastra, which goes back to the 1st century or even before that. It is the K. Krishnamurti, who is a modern critic scholar Ānandavardhana, who has tried to bring the correlation between the rasa and dhvani to such an extent that rasa has made the contribution of dhvani, a dhvanikara. But I think, sir, they are two quite different, and how far we can bring them together. Auchitya quite appropriately is the contribution of Ānandavardhana, but it is the dhvani that is impliedness, and impliedness lies not rasa, it also applies in the subject matter, it also applies in the alankara. Therefore, he has given the three types of dhvani as rasa, vastu, and alankara. So how come only the rasa, one of the types, can be the contribution? He has brought the rasa theme, which was a prominent one in the Indian poetics, under the gamut or in the gamut of dhvani theory. Rasa was already there.
That is true. I do not claim that Ānandavardhana has invented rasa theory. I am only saying that whatever theory already there was, he has given it in the context of dhvani. So, and he has emphasized that rasa is the most important. Even dhvani has also different types of dhvani. But out of those types, rasa is the most important thing. This is the contribution of Ānandavardhana. Not that the concept of dhvani was invented by him. It was already there.
Yes.
But to give due importance to it, that was the contribution of Ānandavardhana. That is what I claim. Rasa was already there. People were knowing the number of rasas. Even Bharata has mentioned them, and he has also used the word rasa. That is true. Other people also, but they were not given. They were not giving that much importance to rasa as Ānandavardhana has given. And then afterwards, later scholars also followed that theory, and they also gave the most importance to rasa. So therefore, I say that rasa, importance of rasa, emphasizing the importance of rasa, this is the contribution of Ānandavardhana. Not the concept of rasa itself was invented by him. It was already there, but it was given due importance by Ānandavardhana, and that is his contribution.
Yes, and he has given probably the right classification
Yes.
of everything. So, like Newton's law, it had existed before Newton, of course, but he classified it.
So
So
it
that,
is not his invention. I do not
Yes,
think that
obviously,
rasa was created by him. Concept of rasa was not there at all earlier. That is not what I say. The concept was there, but to give very great importance to it, this is the contribution of Ānandavardhana.
so the due classification, that is the main point here.
Yes.
And in that sense, sir, dhvani was also prevalent. The concept of dhvani was also prevalent. He was the mere compiler. He was not the propounder of the system.
Again, the
Yes.
same point. He has not created or he has not invented dhvani. He was there, but he has given due importance to it. And by saying that dhvani is the soul of poetry, he has highlighted the importance of dhvani. Other people were knowing dhvani and some other concepts like guna, riti and other things. But to give the highest importance to a particular concept may be considered as the contribution of that scholar, just as riti was known by other scholars also. But Vamana called riti ratma kavyasa. So this is his contribution. Not the concept of riti is a concept, is a contribution of Vamana. But to call riti as the most important part in poetry, this is a contribution of Vamana. Similarly, to give the highest importance to dhvani and even in dhvani to rasa, this is the highest contribution or the most important contribution of Ānandavardhana. That is what I claim.
So there is one corollary small question to it, that can we say that the rasa is the soul of the poetry even today? Because there are many things, many stories, many which are merely thought-provoking, which tells the fact, but it cannot lead or cannot say this is the rasa of the poetry.
That is
So, in that
This
case,
objection
what
was
can be
raised-
the case of criticism as laid down by Ānandavardhana?
Yes. So this objection was raised by Jagannath Pandit also.
Yes.
That rasa is the most important thing, but there can be some poetry which may be very good, but still it may be without any rasa. For example, there may be a good description of a cataract, and there is no rasa there, but still it may be beautiful. So therefore, whatever is present to a connoisseur is the poetry. That is the definition which has been given by Jagannath Pandit, and he has not supported the definition of Vishwanatha, that is Bhaktim Rasa Kutam Kavyam, because not every poetry may be consisting of rasa only.
Yeah, thank you very much for this discussion. And well, we can find probably the similar concepts even on the level of the Vedas, like the Dhvani and Rasova Isaha. This is the Upanishads.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's a question of exactly classification, like the Newton's law had existed before Newton. Newton did not invent it, he classified it, introduced it. So it works like in a similar way, maybe.
You have one right simile.
Yeah.
There was gravity even before Newton, but to give due importance of
Yes.
that was his contribution.
Exactly, exactly. Thank you very much. There was an interesting discussion after this speech, after this paper. And our next speaker represents the Financial University
Natalia
under the
want to
government of
ask.
Russian Federation, Moscow, Russia. This is Dmitrii Popov. And he's going to speak about Gauḍīya Vedānta. He will trace its history from classic times to modernity. And in my opinion, it should be a topical intervention, because Chaitanya Bhakti is being spread all over the world nowadays. So let's try to understand how it's been developing. So you're welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Dmitrii?
Can you hear me?
Speaker. Dhanyavad. Dhanyavad.
Okay. Do you hear me? Yes?
Мы вас не слышим по какой-то причине.
Да.
Звук у нас включен, презентацию мы видим, но мы вас не слышим.
Ну да, да,
Вы,
да.
вы в наушниках?
Да. Ну,
Если
да,
вы в
почему?
наушниках, то снимите их.
Ну я понял.
Вы нас слышите? Дайте какой-нибудь сигнал, что вы нас
For those
слышите.
who are online, you are audible. So it's maybe again problem with that account.
Проблемы, да, опять? Мгм.
Вы меня слышите? Дайте сигнал какой-нибудь.
Да.
Хорошо. Значит, это с вашей стороны. С их, с его.
Да.
Может быть, ему попросить выйти и зайти? Не знаю. Что можно сделать в такой ситуации?
Мы слышим его. Те, кто онлайн, слышат
Может быть, вы
его.
выйдете и зайдете?
Ну, у нас
Или
тут
что?
слышно внутри.
Вы в наушниках?
Простите, насколько я понимаю, вообще всех тех, кто
Да, снимите
онлайн,
наушники.
кто на Pune, не
Отключите их, у вас Bluetooth.
Никого не слышно у нас тут. Мгм.
А здесь не слышно. Так, сейчас посмотрим. А можно тот компьютер тогда включить как основной? Микрофончик сюда вот соедините.
Мгм.
Так. Тут чат.
Дмитрий, скажите что-нибудь.
Всем, кто онлайн, слышно. О,
Сейчас.
да, теперь мы слышим. Все, можете начинать.
Хорошо.
Моего?
Thank you. Let's start. My topic will dedicate to Gauḍīya Vedānta literature, specific to philosophical literature. Gauḍīya tradition have a lot of poetics literature, but my talk dedicate to philosophical. Gauḍīya Vedānta is the last independent branch of Vedānta, the central school of Indian philosophy. Its formation took place at the 16th to 18th centuries in the northeastern part of India, with centers in Bengal, formerly Gauda, Risa, now Odisha, and Vrindavan, Madhur, Uttar Pradesh. And the main source of inspiration for this philosophical system is the reformer and preacher of the Bhakti cult Sri Krishna Chaitanya, to whom all the main philosophical works of this tradition are devoted. And Gauḍīya Vedānta observed the most important philosophical developments of the previous Vedanta trends and created the last tradition commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, Govinda Bhashya of Baladeva Vidyabhushana. Gauḍīya Vedanta is vibrant and distinctive philosophical tradition of Bengali Vaishnavism. According to Ravi Gupta, the Gauḍiyas brought early modern Vedanta back to life in northern India among the widespread tantric movements of the time which reject philosophy, especially Vedanta. The Gauḍiyas managed to combine rationality and religious emotions. Along with Bhaskara's Veda Shankara's Advaita Vedanta, yes, along with Bhaskara's Veda, Shankara's Advaita Vedanta, Ramanuja's Vishishta Advaita Vedanta, and Madhava's Advaita Vedanta, the Gauḍīya tradition developed the philosophical system of Achintya Bheda, inconceivable difference and unity, formulated by Jiva Goswami, and at least from the point of view of history, as the last word in the destruction of existence by Vedanta, initiated by Shankara in opposition to Buddhism. The relevance of Gauḍīya Vedanta's literature research is related to the non-symmetrical nature of research that take place among the areas of Vedanta. As Russian researchers show, Advaita Vedanta is the most well-known and widespread school in the academic space. In addition, historically, it was Advaita Vedanta in its interpretation of the main philosophical text of Hinduism that become known in Western world and Russia, thus becoming the hallmark of all Indian philosophy. Professor Sementsov, in whose memory this conference is being held, notes in his analysis of the commentary on the Bhagavad Gita in relation to Gita Bhushana, Gita Bhashya Shankara. That work was long considered the main authority in the exegesis of the Gita. Then a number of strained and controversial interpretations we found in it, especially in the area of the Gita's teaching connection. And now most experts prefer Bhashya Ramanuja. Rosanna Vladimirovna, who also refers to the research of John Tiba, who state that the Vishishta Advaita system is a more consistent continuation of the ideas of the author of Brahma Sutras, and therefore had the right to be called Vedanta to a greater extent than the Advaita of Shankara. The success of Advaita Vedanta is related to its potential for popularization, which is contained in the simplicity of presentation. There is only one undescribable and inaccessible beginning. Everything else is an illusion. However, the same trends are observed in the research literature also, both in the Eastern and Western ones. In the existing collection of Indian philosophy, Gauḍīya Vedanta is usually devoted to the last chapters as a final system of Indian thoughts. In Indian collection of the history of philosophy, assessment more often given a critical way as the decadence of Vedanta. This is due to the historical features of the formation of the academic environment in India also. In the academic circles of India, the situation is unfavorable for Gauḍīya Vedanta. On the one hand, it was poorly evaluated by Radhakrishnan, who was more inclined to Advaita Vedanta. He starts the description of epistemology of Gauḍīya philosophy, the following assessment: there's very little that is specific about it, and also a remark related to their departure from the unity of the absolute of Advaita. And however, more critical content can be found in the textbook Manarajan Roy, translated into Russian from Bengali also. He accesses Gauḍīya Vedanta of supporting of Vaishnavism, which is a religion, slave psychology, thus place emotions above reason and benefits feudalism and despotism. Amir Sen's monograph Chaitanya, His Life and Legacy, can reveal even more about the situation in India, which contains various kinds of criticism to Bengali Vaishnavism, historical, sociological, cultural studies. Sen mainly uses criticism from Bengali source, among them Bengali communist, nationalist, and colonialist, some of which are banned in modern day in Bengal. This suggests that the difficulties within India for the study of Gauḍīya Vedanta. However, a good exception can be considered the textbooks of Surendranath Dasgupta, a native of Bengal, which is characterized by more harmonious proportion and natural presentation of the Gauḍīya Vedanta system, even with some creative reconstruction, but unfortunately is not accessible for the Russian speaker reader. To evaluate the existing tradition of Gauḍīya Vedanta, it's worth quoting the names and the works of the main theologian and philosopher of the tradition. The founder of the tradition, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, left no works behind, but in the main text of the tradition, the Chaitanya Charitamrita of Krishnadas Kaviraja, written on the basis of philosophical texts of the tradition and personal conversation with their authors. The main instruction and philosophical statements transmitted by Chaitanya to his disciples, reconstructed by embodied in the text. It also contained the most important text of the Bhagavata Purana, of the main sacred text of the Gauḍīya tradition. Let's leave the main disciples of Chaitanya in our in this philosophical tradition. Sanatana Goswami, one of the senior first generation Gauḍīya theologians of renown, wrote Brihat Vaishnava Toshani, a commentary of the 10th book of the Bhagavata Purana, and poetically presented various aspects of Gauḍīya Vedanta philosophy in the Brihat Bhagavatamrita and its commentaries. Rupa Goswami, the younger brother of Sanatana, worked on the design and aestheticization of the mythology in the treatises Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Ujjvala Nimalani, Upadeshamrita, and Laghu Bhagavatamrita. The new view of Rupa and Sanatana Jiva Goswami was educated in Varanasi and became the main philosopher who expressed the main point of Gauḍīya Vedānta on classical problems of Indian philosophy. His main philosophical works considered Shat Sandarbha, systematic exposition in 6 parts, Sarva Samvadini, comprehensive coordination, Krama Sandarbha, consistent presentation, commentary on the Bhagavata Purana, and Sukha Bodhini, happiness awakening commentary on the Gopala Tapani Upanishada. Also Digdarshini Tika, commentary showing the direction of the Brahma Samhita commentaries. And commentaries on the mentioned works of Rupa Goswami also. Also was mentioning is important co-author of the Sandarbhas, Gopala Bhatta Goswami, originally from South India. He received a classical education in Vishishta-Advaita Vedanta and helped to apply the system in Gauḍīya Vedanta. From a tradition outside of Vrindavan, one can mention Kavi Karnapura from Bengal, who, thanks to his theoretical understanding of the philosophy of Chaitanya, set out in his poetic work Chaitanya Chandranaya Nataka, was able to resolve the philosophical contradictions of various groups of Bengali Vaishnavism. It's very important poetic for this tradition, also in philosophical sphere. The next generation of students were engaged in popularization of the works of Goswami in accessible forms of songs, bhajans. But for the next generation, the subsequent development of Gauḍīya Vedanta was required. Among them, one can distinguish Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura, who worked on internal philosophical issues. It's specific of Gauḍīya Vaishnava philosophy and identity due to various philosophical deviation within the movement. This includes the first detailed commentary on the Bhagavata Purana, covering all philosophical topics, Sarartha Darshinitika, and the first Gauḍīya commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, Sarartha Varshinitika, and work out the theme of soteriology in the work Madhurya Kandabini. Also worth noting the commentaries on the Gopala Tapani Upanishada, Bhakta Harshini, commentaries on the Sanskrit verses of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Tika, and the mentioned works of Rupa Goswami. The works of Rupa Goswami is in the center of all philosophical literatures. Vishwanath Chakravarti's successor was Baladeva Vidibhushana.
Thank you very much for
Who received his primary education and ordination as a monk in Madhava Dvaita Vedanta school. He wrote in the context of the Muslim attack on Vrindavan and its destruction and the relocation of many Gauḍiyas to Jaipur. In Jaipur, it was necessary to defend its philosophical authority, and for this purpose, first a brief commentary on the Brahma Sutras, Brahma Sutra Karika Bhashya was written, then a more detailed Govinda Bhashya, and later Siddhanta Darpana, answer to the widespread criticism of Gauḍīya Vedānta. In particular, commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, Gita Bhushana Bhashya, was written to regulate the attitude of the Gauḍiyas toward the Dharmic culture of Jaipur and on all Dharmic culture, to prove the tradition of Gauḍīya Vedanta and its continuity from Dvaita Vedanta of Madhava. Baladeva wrote Pramir Tadvali, where he generalized the correspondence of Gauḍīya philosophy on the 9 postulates of Madhava. Baladeva also wrote commentaries on the major Upanishads and the Kapaltapani Upanishad, as on the Sandarbhas of Jiva Goswami, and Tattva Sutras, reinterpreting Tattva Sutras, which and Tattvadipika for the king of Jaipur, Jaisingh II. The work is done in the style of Vedantic stratification of reality with a description of 16 darshanas, schools of Indian philosophy, with the Bhagavata philosophy at the very top. Perhaps Valadeva's most recent work is Siddhanta Ratna, composed as an introduction to Govinda Bhashya and summarizing its main provisions on topics, as well as including the latest developments of Baladeva ideas. In the second half of the 18th century, the influence of the East Indian Company expanded significantly. High taxes caused mass starvation, which generally led to the decadence of the intellectual culture. However, there is the transfer of power to the Queen and the development of Bengal as the main metropolis. It gave a new impetus and challenges to the Indian philosophy, which resulted in the Bengali Renaissance. Part of this Renaissance was the first prominent representative of Gauḍīya Vedanta in modern philosophy, Bhaktivinoda Thakura, having received an English education in Calcutta and converted to Christianity. In the 16th, he became attracted to the Gauḍīya teachings and wrote the first work of Gauḍīya Vedanta in the form of an essay in English, the Bhagavata, its philosophy, ethics, and theology. developing the universalist ideas of the Gauḍīs. In the first half of 17th, Bhaktivinoda studied Sanskrit and the main philosophical works of Gauḍīya Vedānta in Jagannath Puri, on the one of the Gauḍīya center of Risa or modern Odisha. As a result, Sanskrit collection of the principle of Vedanta philosophy, Vedanta Adhikara Namala, was written. After that, he returns to Calcutta, where he receives initiation and becomes a Gauḍīya leader and writes major works. The Krishna Samhita in Sanskrit with Bengali introduction and explanation is aimed to the Bengali intellectual people, Bhadralokas. In addition to publish classical works of the past Bengali tradition and commentary, Bhaktivinoda writes in Bengali prose style on the application of Chaitanya's philosophy to modern condition, Shri Chaitanya Shikshamrita and Prameya Ratnavali, and reconciles Gauḍīya Vedanta with Shruti and Smriti in Amnaya Sutra, and shows the connection with the philosophy of Ramanuja, Madhava, Vishnuswami, and Nimbarka in Navadvipadhamma Mahatmya, and writes an introduction to the Siddhanta Ratnam of Baladeva. He systemized Gauḍīya Vedanta in Darsha Mula Tattva and Tattva Sutras, reinterpreting Baladeva's Prameya Ratnavali. It's also important. And he writes another Bengali works in prose like Jaiva Dharma. Very interesting works. It's Tattva Viveka. He compares the idea of Gauḍīya Vedanta with modern philosophy in Sanskrit traits with Bengali commentaries. It's very interesting. He discussed with Locke, Gobbs, Kant, and another European philosophers. The Bhaktivinoda Thakur was succeeded by his son, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. He was educated at Calcutta University and Sanskrit College, where he received the title of Saraswati for his knowledge in astronomy. It's also important.
Dmitrii,
Okay.
Dmitrii, excuse me, your time is about to finish. So your time is about to finish. So come to your conclusions, please.
Yes, I just want to present last important author, Bhaktivedanta Swami, and he continued the publication of the English language magazine Back to Godhead and made the first translation of the commentaries based on the previous tradition of Gauḍīya Vedanta in English, Bhagavata Purana, Bhagavata Gita, Ishopanishata, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and Upadeshamrita, and Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And that was brief description of the Gauḍīya Vedanta literature, which I suppose needs for deeper Sanskrit, deeper research. Thank you.
Have you finished?
Yes, I'm finished.
Okay. So thank you for your presentation. Are there any questions in the audience? Maybe someone who's online, offline. Well, I will allow myself a couple of remarks with the permission of respected colleagues.
No, there's no permission.
No permission, but there is a permission. I'm sorry. I'm the moderator of this program. Anyway, so, well, I would say that what I felt, and maybe you can clear up this issue, I would say that the examples of criticism of Gauḍīya Sampradaya that you cited in the beginning, they mostly refer to its social impact. Not to the philosophy or theology, it's rather social impact. And that was obviously due to the fact that in pre-reformist times, that is before the Bengali Renaissance, mostly such small Bengali sects were kind of social in a sense. So for probably there were some fears that such sects would prevent the construction, the building up of the new independent India, unlike, for example, Neo-Vedānta that was actively participating in the movement for independence. But I'm not sure if there is any substantial criticism on the level of philosophy, because what we're interested in this respect is rather a philosophical dispute. As far as I know, there was, for example, there were examples of close cooperation between the Chaitanya devotees in 17th century and Sri Sampradaya, for example, in the Ramanandi's Bhaktamala of the 17th century, written by Goswami Nabhadasji. Chaitanya and Nityananda are mentioned, and even more, they are mentioned as avatars of Krishna and Balaram. So their divine status, which is a unique feature of Gauḍīya Sampradaya, was supported somehow. And the first commentator of Bhaktamala was a Gauḍīya Vaishnava, that is Priyadas. So there was a certain close cooperation in the 17th century, and I know that there is a story circulating about the conflict between Ramanandis and Gauḍīya Vaishnavas. Probably you know that, and that is highly doubtful, to be honest, because I mean, I think that this is a matter of hagiography, like the literature intended to probably establish position of this sect, because the counter arguments of Sri Sampradaya against Gauḍīya Vaishnavas in this conflict, they have nothing to do with the actual teaching of Ramananda Sampradaya. For example, the worship of Radha and Krishna was common for Ramanandis as well, so how could they criticize Gauḍiyas for the same? It's kind of strange. So in my opinion, the story is kind of maybe fabricated, or maybe there were some different opponents, and due to the transmission of this story, they changed roles or something. Yeah. So this is the first remark. The criticism comes from social purpose, for social purposes, and not for the philosophical purposes, because philosophical argument of Shastrartha in Indian culture is a very common thing. And even when different representative of different schools, they call one another like donkeys and dogs and pigs. It's common. It's a common tradition. Even Shankaracharya would use this language for Nastikas. So this is the remark. Maybe you can say about something about that.
Yes, these critics
just a couple of words.
Yes, have a root in the social importance. But it have influence on the development of philosophical research. This is my position. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We are going further, and our next speaker is Kaveri Jadhav, Professor Kaveri Jadhav, from our hosting Pune University, Pune, India. She is going to speak on the subject of Tantrayukti as a methodology of ancient Sanskrit texts, and that will be a review.
Good evening. The title of the paper is Tantrayukti as a methodology of study of ancient Indian Sanskrit text, a review. It is well established fact that the vast mass of knowledge related to innumerable sciences has been composed, preserved, and handed down through the ages in Sanskrit language, firstly by oral tradition and then by written word. It is simply astonishing that this huge mass of knowledge has remained intact over many centuries thanks to the genius of our forefathers that they have evolved a distinct methodology for the composition and preservation of knowledge data that they have produced. The present paper attempts to dwell upon few ancient Indian methodology of philosophical, that is Shastric scriptures in general, and Tantrayukti in particular, with special reference as a method of study. Methodology is a systematic way of methods and techniques employed for laying down the tenets of any discipline. Ancient Sanskrit texts are replete with such methodology that serve two purposes in one go. That is, to set the text in an organized way and present a systematic way of the study of the knowledge data and the text as well. The former, that is the structure of the text, encompasses the latter, that is the mode of the study, though the matter is more important than the manner. Since the Vedic times, different methods were utilized by the seers and the preceptors while imparting the knowledge of Brahman to the disciples. They are like the polemic method, which is integral to the Upanishadic teachings, analogy, which have been also utilized to bring the point of Brahman entity. Then the dialogue form, which is also found in Rigvedic literature, like the Chatvari Shungaha, Trayosya Padaha, such kind of other themes are there. Then the story form, which has been utilized also in the Upanishadic form, just like in Kena Upanishad. Then etymological form, that has been also utilized, and positive and negative sentential form, to name a few. Later on, the philosophical texts adhered to the Khandana Mandana style in Shankaracharya's writing and Anvaya Vyatireka style in Navyanaya writings. Besides these, few other considerations are also essential to learn the philosophical text thoroughly. The first is the pattern of the text. Generally, it is a matter of the text that determines the type of the text. The base text of any philosophical system is composed in sutra style, which reflects the necessity and demand of the oral tradition to keep it compact, succinct, as much as they can to relieve the strain on the memorization. Many a time it is evident that the clarity was compromised for the sake of brevity and brevity, which compelled the later generations to exhaust themselves on their elaboration and explanation that led to the birth of series of varied commentary literature such as Bhashya, Vritti, Vartika, Tika, Vyakhyana, Vyakya, and Prakarana Granthas, and so on. Though they all can be brought under an umbrella term of commentary, each of them has a specific function to perform unique to itself. For example, Vartik has a more corrective role to play with regard to the tenets of the base text, while Bhashya has to bolster the same, whereas Vritti has to serve the examples and the counter examples for the tenets and the so on. When serving their set fixed functions, these commentaries have rendered more service since they had to take cognizance of the remarks, both positive and negative, from the contemporary rival systems and inner revolts in the system, if any, and check the divergent currents trying to set in the system. The series of commentaries in the Jnana system stand as a best illustration to the above. When studying any text, the nature of the same, such as whether it is a bhashya or vartika, is as much important as the knowledge data contained therein to get the comprehensive knowledge and the idea of the text. The structure of the text is an inalienable element in the knowledge data. The former inherently resides in the latter and permeates and influences the whole knowledge data. Hence, having the first-hand knowledge and understanding of the structure of this text is inevitable for the study of the text. The second one is understanding the inter and intra-system relation. The philosophical systems of ancient India had an affiliation or repugnancy with other systems, the understanding of which is prerequisite for studying any philosophical system. No system can be studied in isolation. The six systems of ancient Indian philosophy can be paired into three sets, with each of them having their own affiliating system. For example, Nyaya having Vaisheshika, Yoga having Sankhya, and Purva Mimamsa having Uttar Mimamsa, that is Vedanta. They share many things in common, ranging from ontological to epistemological tenets. Yoga system does not deal with the ontological principle since it totally relies for the same on Sankhya system. And syncretism of Nyaya and Vaisheshik system show a best exchange of ontological and epistemological tenets. These are the systems that agree with each other, but at the same time, there are some tenets which are constantly in disagreement with each other and sometimes also with his affiliated system. The textual conversation cannot be fully grasped unless one has the idea of the system under scrutiny with another. Hence, interdisciplinarity is essential method for study of any philosophical states. The next method is the presentation. Systemization of any stream of knowledge and turning it into science is so much integral to the Indian genius that we find it being employed from mundane and immoral act of stealing to the transcendental method of meditation and attainment of salvation. That is the beauty of Indian sciences, because here we also find a science of stealing. Chauri Shastra is a science in Indian philosophy. The subject matter is presented in a set of statements forming distinctive manner of presentation. The manner of presentation of the subject matter corresponds with and complements the manner of understanding the same. This cohesion of manner of presentation with the method of understanding is quite unique and is little exclusive to each system. For example, Pancha Avayav, or the statement of five components like Pratijna, Hetu, Udaharana, Upanaya, and Nigamana, is followed by Nyaya system, whereas the system of seven components like Upakrama, Upasamhara, Abhyasa, Apurvata, Phalam, and Arthavada, Upapatti is unique to Mimamsa system. The presentation of topic, that is Adhikarana, into five components as laid down by Mimamsakas evinces a systematic approach towards the learning process. The Nyaya pattern of text forming Uddesha, that is enumeration, Lakshana, that is definition, and Pariksha, that is examination, also makes the student dive deep into the subject in a very gradual manner. Now I will start with the Tantrayuktis. Besides above mentioned methods of study that were prevalent in ancient India to study the scientific texts, there is one more method, that is Tantrayukti, which is unique to itself and was refined in itself. The meaning of the term Tantrayukti is made of two words, that is Tantra means science and Yukti means the techniques. The word Tantra is derived from the root Tana, that is the meaning to spread. Thus, Tantra can be used in the sense which elaborates the matter or tenets of any system. Traditionally, the word has been used as a synonym of science or knowledge branch. It has been defined as Tanoti Vipulan Arthan Tantra Mantra Samanvitan Tranam Chukurute Yasma Tantram iti Abhidhiyate. The word yukti has been derived from the word yuja, meaning to join or employed, and it is employed in the sense of usage of device, technique. The whole word Tantrayukti therefore means the technique of science. Primarily, they have been employed for the composition of text and hence are basically to be grasped by the writers or the composers of the scientific or philosophical texts. Though the application of 28 Tantrayuktis is found much before the text of Ashtadhyayi of Panini, the earliest written theoretical references about Tantrayukti are found in Kautilya Arthashastra of Kautilya, that is belong to the 3rd century circa BC. The last 15th chapter of Arthashastra is completely devoted to Tantrayuktis, wherein he has enumerated and defined them. Moreover, he has shown the application of all enumerated 32 Tantrayuktis in his own text. Thereafter, Charaka Samhita, a seminal work on Ayurveda, has enumerated 36 Tantrayuktis. Besides reckoning 4 more than the list of Kautilya, the nomenclature of sub-Tantrayuktis is quite different from the one given in the later text. After Charaka, Sushruta, in his Sushruta Samhita, has also dealt with the same. He has reckoned again the 32. He has come back and reduced the number of Tantrayuktis from 36 to 32. Vagbhata, in his Ashtanga Sangraha, alias Vruddha Vagbhata, has laid down 36 Tantrayuktis. The commentary on Sankhya Karika, named Yukti Dipika, has also dealt with the same at the very outset of his commentary. Beside Ayurvedic texts, Vishnu Dharmottara Puran, circa 400 to 600 BC, AD, has also dealt with the same, whereas the author, compiler, has verbatim followed Kautilya Arthashastra. A Keralite author named Nina Megha has written an independent text named Tantrayukti Vichara. Thus, mostly texts composed during 3rd century BC and 9th century AD have dealt with this subject and reckoned them between 32 to 36. Thereafter, we don't find any text theoretically dealing with the same, but methodology of these Tantrayuktis can be seen to have been followed meticulously even before 3rd century BC by Panini, 3rd century BC by Panini in the 5th century BC and till 18th century. Since it had become ingrained in the subject matter and evolved as a method of presentation as well as study in the Indian scholastic tradition in the long span of 1500 years. Moreover, we can observe that the diverse subject matters ranging from Ayurveda to public administration and polity to Puranic literature have utilized Tantrayuktis in their text. Thus, though there is a preponderance of Ayurvedic texts dealing with the same, in the theoretic manner, it was utilized along with the Ayurvedic text also in some scientific literature and the other knowledge branches. The few writers among those who have dealt with the Tantrayuktis in their texts have also brought forth the role and function of them in scientific composition. Charaka, the first amongst them, has paid glowing tributes to their contribution by stating at that just as a lamp lights up the whole house and sun makes the lotuses bloom, similarly, Tantrayuktis shed light on the meaning. If one gets knowledge of any of one science thoroughly, he can immediately gain knowledge of other sciences and streams as well, since he is aware of the Tantrayuktis. And if any medical practitioner had learned the science bereft of Tantrayuktis, then he does not get the meaning of their science. The above word of Charaka has underscored the process of learning, which involves learning the text not merely literally or mugging up the text, but understanding it thoroughly with all its nuances and with its hidden meaning. Tantrayuktis are the devices that help one to gain the knowledge in this way. To cite the words of Lele W.K. with respect to the importance of Tantrayukti, he says, and I quote, Tantrayuktis are integral part of scientific topic. As a corollary, the knowledge of Tantrayuktis is a key to the understanding of scientific treatise on any branch of knowledge. Chakrapani Datta, a commentator of Charaka Samhita, has also shed further light on the role of Tantrayuktis in his commentary. Sushruta states that the purpose of Tantrayukti is the arrangement of sentences and organizing of meaning. And to support his statement, he quotes 4 floating verses that were in vogue, which state that with the help of Tantrayuktis, the arguments of opponent can be denounced and one's own statement can be established. The matters that are expressed, unexpressed, hidden, unclearly stated, or least adduced to get the full exposure when Tantrayuktis are employed. Dallana, a commentator of Sushruta Samhita, explains it further and as given under, he says, Vakyasya asambandhisya yojanam sambandhanam vakya yojanam. Linasya asamgatasya cha arthasya prakashanam samgatikaranam cha artha yojanam. Tatra kansachit tantrayuktinam yoga uddesha nirdeshadinam vakya yojanam कांसाचित अधिकरण पदार्थादीनाम अर्थयोजना. Thus, bringing cohesion between unconnected sentence is vakya yojana, and bringing out underlying meaning, making group of statement relevant by bringing interconnection among them is artha yojana. Thus, Sushruta seems to have dived deep into the function of Tantrayuktis than Charaka and has given classification of Tantrayuktis on the basis of their functions. It represents the working of the Tantrayuktis that the generations have involved in and bringing in more clarity, refinement in their functioning. Vagbhata and further authors have more often requoted the verses of their predecessors with the slight changes in wordings. The 32 Tantrayuktis enumerated by the writers that I have enumerated ahead, that like just like Adhikarana, Yoga, Hetvartha, Padartha, Uddesha, Apadesha, Atidesha, and so on. They are 36 in number. The names of these Tantrayuktis make it clear that they have been named after the purpose they serve. Hence, they have been literally named. Hence, the titles themselves are enough to bring home their meaning. Further, many of the terms are common with the other knowledge systems, such as the term yoga denotes Tantrayukti as well as an independent philosophical system. Tantrayukti such as Upamana, Nirdeshana are the figure of speech in science of poetics, whereas Arthapati is an independent means of knowledge of Mimamsakas. Tantrayuktis such as Vyakhyana and Nirvachana are the methods of exposition of subject matter and so on. So, not a Tantrayukti, not a single Tantrayukti has been mentioned or has been named exceptionally. All the names were those that were vogue in the philosophical and the scholastic discussion in ancient India. Many of them are common with the padarthas of Nyaya system, such as Samshaya, Prayojana, Nirnaya, Upamana, Tarka, has been paraphrased as Uyya. Hence, their names are not all technical jargons difficult to understand. The Tantrayuktis such as Purva Paksha and Uttar Paksha reminisce us of oral tradition of the knowledge and knowledge transmission and its polemic nature. Some terms are used quite in another sense than their usual sense in philosophical system, such as apavarga, which means bliss, solitude in or salvation in Indian philosophy, but it has been used as an exception to the general rule in the case of Tantrayuktis. The cursory glance is enough to understand that Tantrayuktis are essentially meant for the writers of scientific composition as they advocate the manner and the method to be utilized by the writers to make the text palatable to the readers and ease the understanding of knowledge data. Thus, the presentation of style and method of the text has been so adjusted that it has been pressed into function concurrently serving the purpose of understanding the same. These functions, simultaneously served by the Tantrayuktis, have been explicitly put forth by their division of functions into Vakya Yojana and Artha Yojana by Sushruta. When we think of Vakya Yojana in scientific treatise, it underscores the presentation of knowledge data in a systematic manner, which can be equated with the stream of research methodology in modern study, which involves a systematic exposure to the knowledge data. It brings in the role of Uddesha, Nirdesha, Samuchaya, and so on other Tantrayuktis. When we think of Artha Yojana, it relates to the method of study and it involves the functions rendered by Tantrayuktis such as Adhikarana, Uyya, Padartha, Atidesha, and so on. The Tantrayuktis are common devices endowed. Something has happened. The Tantrayuktis are common sense devices endowed with more precisional functions to present the scientific treatises and study the same in a systematic manner. Actually, words and their meanings are mutually embedded and intrinsically connected and hence cannot be segregated in watertight compartments. Hence, the devices which help in understanding Vakya Yojana also help secondarily and indirectly to serve the Artha Yojana. Hence, it is an equally and method of study. The methods are not unique as their application is. The ingenuity of Indians lies in their collection and their proper utilization in the making a scientific treatise. Besides, many commonalities with Nyaya system underscore the utilization of the method of Nyaya as a method of study than a branch of philosophy. Since Nyaya methods have been exhausted by all branches of study ranging from poetics to the philosophy. Hence, I hereby attempt to establish Tantrayukti not as a science for the presentation of the research or scientific treatise, but also an indigenous method of study of the text. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, for your paper. Are there any questions, remarks, suggestions? Yes, we have one.
Can we compare Tantrayukti as specific marks of Shastric literature to Alankaras as specific marks of artistic literature?
No, sir. No. There can be some poetic composition bereft of poetics, but there cannot be scientific literature bereft of Tantrayukti.
No, I said not. I said that as the poetic literature is characterized by alankaras, so the chastic literature is characterized by Tantrayukti.
Yes, they are integral to that. Yes. But we can see alankaras are not characteristic to poetic literature, sir. In Upanishadic literature, even in some scientific literature, we find the Drushtantas, alankaras, means such as analogy, that is Drishtanta, that is called as Upamana, have been exhausted to bring home the point. So Upanishadic literature is not a poetic literature, but we find the utilization of alankaras therein.
Thank you very much. Any other questions, remarks? People who are online? No. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And now we're going to pass the microphone. Go there, otherwise people will not hear online. I keep on forgetting that it comes from here and not from there. Yeah, our next and the last speaker for today is Maxim Leonov. He is a member of the Puruṣottama Research Center of the People's Friendship University, Moscow, Russia. And his paper is called Some Features of the Traditional Indian Worldview in the Sanskrit Subhashita.
Can you hear me?
You're welcome. You can start your speech.
Can you hear me? You don't hear me? Yes?
Tim, can you hear us?
Yes, I hear you.
Say something. We cannot hear you again.
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
And do you hear me? No?
I'm joining online. I can hear you.
Не слышу. I don't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you, but I don't hear Maxim.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I hear.
You can start speaking.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You can start speaking.
Okay, thanks. I would like to say some words about Subhashitas, about the features that seem to me interesting. The word Subhashita means well said. This genre of literature has existed in India since ancient times. Subhashita, well-known researcher Ludwig Sternbach wrote that you can find examples of Subhashita already in Rig Veda and Aitareya Brahmana, as well as in the Upanishads and epics. He considers one of the first collection of Subhashitas to be the anthology Satasai in Maharashtra, which was compiled by certain Hala. Perhaps it was King Hala of Satavahana dynasty in the 2nd century. The oldest collection of Subhashitas in Sanskrit is the anthology Subhashita Kosha, compiled by Vidyakara, a Buddhist monk in the early 12th century. Subhashita is often defined as a poetic aphorism. This is not entirely true. Ludwig Sternbach, who compiled the collection of Subhashitas, Mahasubhashita Sangraha, believes that there are two types of Subhashitas. The first type of Subhashita is the aphoristic Subhashita, written in the meter of Anushtup or epic shloka, which was the main meter of the Indian epic poems Mahabharata and Ramayana. The second type of Subhashita is poetry characterized by good literary treatment, written in a variety of poetic meters and containing descriptions of various aspects of our world. Subhashita anthologies may include only aphorisms or only descriptive verses or both types of verses. For example, in the anthology Subhashita and Kosha, didactic aphoristic poems do not occupy such a large place. Almost a third of this collection is occupied by poems devoted to love themes. These are descriptions of young women, love, pleasure, quarrels, suffering, separation, etc. Many poems are descriptions of the seasons, the moon and sun, winds, landscapes. Also, in the anthology, we will find praises of kings and poets, descriptions of everyday life, complaints about fate, poems about gods. The number of didactic subhashits thus the number of didactic subhashitas in the anthology is small. Sternbach considers the anthology Niti Manjari to be an example of collection of didactic subhashitas. It was compiled in the 15th century. This is a collection of aphorism, proverbs, and maxims. The Niti Manjari contains shlokas from Mahabharata, Manu Smriti, and Hitopadesha. In addition to collection of didactic poetry of anthologies of a mixed type were also compiled in the same era. They contains both didactic and descriptive poetry. Among them, the best known is the collection of poetry Subhashita Vari, compiled by Vallabhadeva around the 15th century. Subhashita Vari contains more than 3,000 poems, which are divided by topic into the 101 sections, so Padhati. We can hardly call the poems collected in Amarushataka didactic. This poetic collection is attributed to a certain Amaru. Researchers usually date it to the 7th, 8th centuries. Amaru's poetry is considered the known шедевр of Sanskrit love poetry. Amarushataka poems are usually mini novels or maybe mini plays. Poems from Amarushataka can be found in Subhashita Kosha, and Ludwig Sternbach included them in his Subhashita collection, Mahasubhashita Sangraha. So we can agree with definition of Subhashita given by Igor Serebrякov. It was a Russian researcher of Bharti Harishatakadayam. He believes that Subhashita is a formal definition. It says that a certain thought is presented in poetic form. The content of Subhashita can be very different. Subhashitas are divided according to content, usually in collections that were compiled not by author, but by topic. So the term Subhashita unites minor genres of classical poetry in Sanskrit, Prakrit, and modern Indian languages. Short poems were not valued for a long time. Thus, Vamana, the author of the treatise on poetics Sutra of Poetic Ornaments, Kavyalankara Sutra, who lived around the end of the 8th century, writes, "There is no beauty in small poems. Light particles taken together do not shine." The great poem Mahakavi was considered a serious genre. These sentences change only at the end of the first millennium. Gradually, literary connoisseurs came to the conclusion that even a short poem can be a literary masterpiece. For example, Ānandavardhana, who lived in the 9th century, wrote in his treatise Dhvanya Loka. It is well known that a single poem of the poet Amaru, for example, may flow with a flavor of love, Shingara Rasa, equal to that of a whole volume. The second half of the first millennium and the beginning of the second can be considered as the era of greatest flowering of Sanskrit Subkhashita. In Subkhashitas, we can see a reflection of important features of the traditional worldview of the cultural elite of India, their perception of life and way of thinking. It should be remembered that Sanskrit Subkhashita is a fundamentally elitist genre. It was created in the language of high culture, close in structure to the language of philosophical treatises. Therefore, the Subkhashita genre is interesting not only from a literary point of view, but also for understanding traditional Indian culture as a whole. The main feature of Subkhashita, which makes it particularly interesting for the study of the traditional Indian worldview, is that its heroes are precisely representatives of the intellectual elite. Usually, the Mahakavi hero is an idealized ruler or god. But in Subkhashitas, we usually see an ordinary city dweller with his joys or troubles. In love poetry, for example, in Amarashataka, it is he who is given in his relation to a woman. Even more about the sense of self of the traditional Indian intellectual can be learned from the poems of Bhartrihari, especially from Vairagya Shataka. Another feature of Subkhashitas, which maybe makes them difficult to understand for Western readers, but is also important for understanding the Indian worldview, is that these poems are not, strictly speaking, tied to a specific author and personal circumstances. Therefore, for Subkhashita, the biographical commentary that is given, for example, to the poems of classical Chinese poets doesn't make sense. We know very little about the Indian poets of those times, but this doesn't not interfere with our understanding of specific poems, since they reflect collective cultural characteristics, not individual circumstances. That's why we can see the attribution of the same poem to different and often very different poems, for example, Bhartrihari and Amaro. In this regard, Subkhashita is most similar to the ancient Greek epigram. It is not for nothing that in the English-speaking traditions, Subkhashitas are often called epigrams, naturally not in the modern, but in the ancient sense of the word. The significant difference between the Subkhashita and the Greek epigram is that the Subkhashita is completely devoid of historical themes. Among the themes of the Subkhashitas, we will not find analogies of such widespread themes of the Greek epigrams as, for example, the Battle of Thermopylae. Also, the epitaph genre is completely absent among Subkhashitas. When Subkhashita talks about a person, she avoids any specifics. If Subkhashita praises a king, then the praise is extremely general. If we are talking about a private person, where we see some nameless characters given in typical situations, it is impossible to imagine that poetess Vidya, for example, wrote a Subkhashita about the death of her friend, as the Greek poetess Arina did. Instead of history, Subkhashitas contain mythology, for example, reference to an episode from the Ramayana, such as the construction of a bridge over the ocean in Dharmakirti's poem. Like the Palatine anthology, the great collection of Greek epigrams, Subkhashita Ratnakosha is organized thematically. In modern collections of Greek epigrams, they are arranged by a poet usually, who in turn are arranged in accordance with chronology. But if we wanted to publish a collection of Sanskrit Subkhashitas in the same way, we will encounter certain difficulties. And the point is not even the inaccuracy of the chronology, but the fact that the Subkhashitas are not tied to a specific poet. The poets themselves are usually known to us only by name, and the names are often given in different versions, so it is difficult to determine whether we are talking about one poet or several. Only conjecturally, we can say that the poem Dharmakirti is identical with the Buddhist philosopher and the poet Panini. Most likely isn't the famous linguist. The impersonality of Indian poets is amazing. We have detailed information about the Chinese poems of the Tang and Sung dynasties, that is, contemporaries of most of the poets whose poems are contained in Sukashita Ratnakosha. But we, in fact, know nothing even about such major Indian poets as Bhartrihari. We know nothing except later legends. We can consider such works as Shatakatrayam or Amarushataka as a result of collective creativity developing over centuries. About the language of Sukashita, the complexity of poetic language is characteristic of any developed culture. When we talk about the language of Sukashita, first of all, remember the language of the Alexandrian poets, or the poets of Roman times of decline of empire. For example, Callimachus, Ausonius, Claudian. The use of words in rare meanings, allegories, mythological references that require erudition from the reader, the complexity of grammatical structures, all these unites Sukashita and Sanskrit Kavi in general with the poetry of late antiquity. However, hardly anyone will argue that the Sanskrit poems in this respect far surpass the Greek and Romans. And the complexity of the Sanskrit Kavya language is an objective thing. It can be explained only by the fact that Sanskrit is further away from us than ancient Greek and Latin. And here it is appropriate to recall another poetic tradition, the ancient Germanic one. Kavya is related to the poetry of skalds, for example, by the active use of canons. Sukashita was a close connection with drama. This connection manifests itself on two levels. Firstly, poems from plays were readily included in anthologies as separate, self-sufficient poems. In Sukashita Ratnakosha, we find verses extracted from the plays of Kalidasa, Harsha, Kalaputi, and other great playwrights. It should be noted that Vidyakara very rarely takes stanzas from the Mahakavya poems. Ingalls, the translator of the anthology Sukashita Ratnakosha, notes that the Vidyakara takes only one stanza from the poems of Kalidasa, while from the plays of this poet he takes 12 stanzas. He takes only 3 stanzas from Bharavi's poem and 1 stanza from Makha's poem Shishupala. At the same time, more than 100 stanzas are included in the anthology from Rajasekhara's dramas. On another level, the connection between Sukashita and dramaturgy is manifested in the fact that it often takes the form of a mini play. This is especially obvious if we take with poems of Amarushataka, which sometimes represented a dialogue between lovers, traditional characters in Sanskrit drama. Thus, Sukashita is a reflection of the collective consciousness of tradition Indian intellectuals in its purest form. The somewhat marginal, not entirely serious nature of this genre compared to Mahakavya gave its authors greater freedom. The intellectual who created the Sukashitas did not feel any special responsibility for his creation, did not feel that he was creating something great. Therefore, in Sukashitas, Indian intellectuals speak out to a greater extent, revealing the inner world to us. Therefore, among the genres of Sanskrit literature, it is Sukashita that has a particular interest for studying the mentality of the intellectual elite of early medieval India. Thank you for attention.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions, comments, remarks? Anything to add? No. Okay, so we have the last speaker. Actually, I announced that Maxim will be the last one, but we have a speaker who didn't manage to do it yesterday. This is Professor Shashi Bala, and she's a professor at Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, Delhi, India. She is going to speak on the topic Tattva Sangraha, the basis of Vajradhatu Mandala in Japan. You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Namaskar. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, yes, you are audible.
Yes, we can hear you. You can speak.
Yeah. Thank you so much. A very good evening. I'm thankful to the organizers, and I'm sorry that yesterday I couldn't manage. And all the respected, distinguished scholars, co-panelists, and all those who have joined online and offline both. It's a great pleasure for me to join you for this conference. Today, I'm going to talk about one of the Sanskrit texts. Its name is Sarva Tathagata Tattva Sangraha. It's a Tantra. Tantras are invaluable texts for understanding Indian, Japanese, Indonesian, Central Asian, and Tibetan arts in terms of painting, sculptures, even architecture. Thousands of tantric texts have been handed down to us in the languages of these countries, which are venerable vestiges of a rich tradition now lost. The vast ocean of tantras has been classified into 4 standard classes of Kriya, Charya, Yoga, and Anuttar Yoga. The chief disciple of the great Tibetan teacher Tsongkhapa, in his analysis of the fundamentals of Buddhist tantras, systematizes the Yoga Tantra literature into fundamental and explanatory tantras. The explanatory tantras are divided into 2, explaining from the viewpoint of Pragya and Upaya. Prajna contrasts with the term Upaya. A certain tantric traditions hold that after the fall from paradise, the phase involving division into male and female constituted a separation of means from inside. Henceforth, men are a source of means and women of insight. 15 texts and 161 commentaries upon them are classified under this scheme. Here below is a conspectus of the classification as it applies to the Sino-Japanese tantras. So I'm going to talk about the Yoga tantras, the Mool and the fundamental tantras. Tattva Sangraha, which gives the initial summary, shows Vairochana, one of the Buddhist gods, as having the perfection of 2 goals. Thereupon, he generates the desire to attain them. Assuming that has been generated, all the subsequent tantras teaches the means of realizing these goals to be attained, and fundamental tantra teaches the common means of accomplishing mundane and supra-mundane siddhis, means achievements. In 1956, John Bruff and Snellgrove, David L. Snellgrove, found a manuscript of Sarva Tathagata Tattva Sangraha from 9th, 10th century, written in Nagari script of that time in the private library of Field Marshal Kaisar Shamsher in Kathmandu in Nepal, which was microfilmed by them. The manuscript is transcribed into Roman and edited by a Japanese scholar, Ishii Yamada. Its facsimile production has been done by Dr. Lokesh Chandra and Snellgrove in 1981. And there were some confusions because some of the leaves of the manuscript were misarranged, were wrongly arranged, and I could manage to handle them properly and reorganize them Before them, the entire text was taken as difficult to be understood. It has been believed in Japan that Tattva Sangraha consisted of 100,000 verses shlokas that are preached in the 18 different places. There are two basic mandalas of the Shingon sect in Japan. One of them is Garbhadhatu or Mahakaruna Garbha Mandala, and the other is Vajradhatu Mandala. So Vajradhatu Mandala is a representation of the first assembly that is called the Tattva Sangraha from among the 18 assemblies. Its Sanskrit manuscripts so far discovered are: one was with Snellgrove, that is in Brahmi script dating from 11th century. Another was in the collection of Professor Sylvain Levy. Still another was with Professor Tucci, written in Devanagari. It has a Tibetan translation as well. We have three versions of Tattva Sangraha in Chinese translations being a popular text. Number one is Vajrabodhi in 4 fascicles. Number 2 is by Amoghavajra in 3 fascicles. And the third one is by Dhanapala in 4 fascicles. Dhanapala's translation agrees almost with the Sanskrit manuscript and Tibetan translation. This was made late in date and it is a translation of the complete text. So we can surmise that the text shows a accomplished phase of development of the Sarvatathagata Tattva Sangraha. There was an Indian Acharya, Shubhakar Singha. The version of Shubhakar Singha denotes the Tattva Sangraha that was the basis of Gobushingan. Gobushingan is a scroll that was made by Shubhakar Singha. It has drawings. So that was made by Shubhakar Singha, and then later it was drawn as Vajradhatu Mandala. It was brought from India. Shubhakar Singha had taken from India to China. Mahavairochana Sutra is another text of pure, that is also Buddhist tantric text, which became one of the basic chronicle sources of Japanese Shingon sect. Here, Mahavairochana, the sutra, was composed somewhere in Kathiawar Peninsula in the mid-7th century and was subsequently transmitted to various regions of India. And our text, the Tattva Sangraha, was composed shortly after the composition of Mahavairochana Sutra, maybe sometime in 8th century, somewhere in southern India. From there, they were taken to China in early 8th century by the teacher Shubhakar Singha, and from there it was transmitted to Japan. In the early 11th century, it was translated into Tibetan also by Shraddhakar Varman and another scholar, Rinchen Tsangpo. There are many names given to Tattva Sangraha like Rita Sanghara, Yoga Sangraha, Vajrashekhara Tantra, etc. So, the term Yoga Sangraha occurs in the text of Jwalamukhi Preti Bali Vidhi with the Yoga Sangraha translated by Amoghavajra. Amoghavajra lived from 746 to 771. He worked at that time. Herein, Yoga Sangraha refers to the Tattva Sangraha as the fundamental text of the Yoga Tantra. In Japan, the most common appellation of our Tantra is Kongo Chokyo Vajrashekhara Tantra. This text, Tattva Sangraha, describes the realm of enlightenment in terms of 5-fold Buddha assembly and the practices to realize the realm in terms of 5 stages of meditation. I'll show you later on. The whole Tantra is divided into 5 parts in 150 folios, which is numbered on both sides by Ishi Yamada. The last part is quite different in form from the earlier 4 parts. The title, as given in colophon of the Tibetan translation, says explicitly, the Mahayana Sutra, named the compendium of truth of all the Tathagatas, together with the additional compendium of Tantra, is furnished. The 4 parts are all referred to as Kalpa Raja. The Vajrayanist concept of Bodhi mind appears to be the same as that of the Yogacara school, which was founded by Maitreya and elaborated by the great teacher Asanga, and the literature of which included, among others, such excellent works such as Tattva Sangraha by Shanta Rakshita. According to this school, the human mind, or as it is called in Buddhism, the Bodhi mind, is something like a continuous stream of momentary consciousness, which changes every moment of consciousness of the previous moment, giving rise to the consciousness of the succeeding moment, the former being the cause of the later. The title Tattva Sangraha means collection of categories. According to Padma Vajra's Tantrartha Avatara Vyakhya, there are 37 categories. The Tattva Sangraha is of signal importance for the historic development of philosophic speculation in India, China, Japan, Tibet, Mongolia, Nepal, etc. Thus, it exerted a mighty influence on the fine arts of all these countries. It was expressed as the Vajradhatu Mandala in the Sino-Japanese tradition. The painted mandala of Tattva Sangraha was brought to Japan by the Japanese Buddhist monk Kobo Daishi, which was taken by Shubhakar Singha to China from India. He took it to Japan in 806, and it is known there as Kongokai Mandara, or in English it is called as Diamond Mandala. Furthermore, the Tattva Sangraha served as the basis for architectural expression in the Lamaist areas also. Architecture mandalas or pure mandalas based on Tattva Sangraha arose at Alchi and Tabo in India, soon when it was translated into Tibetan by Shraddhakar Varman and Rinchen Santo. The earliest Sino-Japanese representation of the Tattva Sangraha, as I said, was done by Shubhakar Singha, 637 to 735 is the date. He drew it on a scroll, and this is the only scroll which is signed by the teacher himself. Shubhakar Singha probably intended to translate the Tantra, but he did not do so. Vajrabodhi had carried the text on his voyage to China, but it was lost on his way when the flotilla was engulfed by a raging storm. He could save its portions for recitation, which he translated into Chinese. It means that it is an abridged edition, and normally such abridged editions are used for chanting. In Sanskrit, we call it Japa Sutra. In Japan, this text is known as Ryaku Shitsukyo, or the abridged sutra. Amog Vajra's translation of the first chapter is most popularly referred to as Kongochokyo. Dhanapala's translation is of the complete text. The Chinese colophon at the end of Rita Sanghara says that it was given in AD 855 by the Chinese. Acharya Fuchuan to his Japanese disciple Enchin, whose Sanskrit name was Jnanavajra. The text has full 6 mandalas. I will show you the drawings of these 6 mandalas. 6 complete or 6 incomplete copies are known. So these are the copies. One copy is kept at the Daigoji, was formerly kept at the Daigoji monastery, but later it was taken to the National Museum. And still later it was published by Omura Seiki Bukkyo Zuzo Shuko. The text of the Gobushingan handed down in Shakamonin monastery at Koyasan, now kept at Sai Nan in monastery in Koyasan. This is a copy from the full text of Onjoji, but its former portion number 1 to 41 are missing. The text kept at Homyo in monastery Mii. It was copied towards the end of the Edo period, that is 19th century, and was published in the iconographic section of the Taisho Tripitaka. It is a copy from full text of Onjoji monastery. The Sanskrit letters are better than those in the deficient text of Onjoji. The text, another copy is the text written and drawn by Zenkaku, the priest of the Onjoji monastery, in the 5th year of Kenkyu, that is 1194. It contains only numbers 1 to 65, but there are 2 moon circles and a figure of Shubhakar Singha at the end of the text. Another copy is with Dr. Gemya Ono, discovered from Rokushu Mandara Ryakushaku in 2 fascicles in the Shorenin monastery. Now, these copies prove that beyond doubt that Shubhakar Singha had been regarded to have translated only the Mahavairochana Sutra, brought in fact the Sanskrit text of Sarvatathagat Tattva Sangraha, thereby translated the figures, the symbols, the mudras, and the sacred formulas, means mantras. So a copy belonging to Mr. Sanji Muto of Kamakura and the copy from Acharajo have been reproduced in the iconographic portion of the Taisho Tripitaka. There are 6 sub-mandalas of Gobushingan that are the 6 coordinates of the text, that is Sarva Tathagat Tattva Sangraha method, by which the yoga wheel of law was set in motion. Now, let us take up the 6 sub-mandalas of Gobushingan. Can I show my PPT? It will be more clear.
You just have to share your screen from your own device.
Yeah, I'm doing
it. Can you do that?
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm doing it. Your screen. Can you see this? Can you see my screen?
Yes, we see.
Okay. So this is the Vajradhatu Mandala in 9 parts. So we start from here, that is the perfected body assembly. Second is the Samaya, that is the symbolic assembly. Third is the subtle assembly. Fourth is the offering, means puja assembly. And then fourth, there are 4 Buddhas, 4 seal assembly, and then it remains only 1 Buddha. So when we meditate, we start from here, go up to the, go down and then to left and then up, and then finally there is only 1 Buddha. So this is Vairochana here, and these 3 were not a part. The Naya Mandala, the Trailokya Vijaya Mandala, and the Trailokya Vijaya Samaya, means symbolic mandala. They originally were not a part of the scroll that was drawn by Shubhakar Singha, that was taken to China from India. This is the central part of the Vajradhatu Mandala, the diamond mandala. This is called the Mahabhuta mandala. Here all the figures, there are 37 deities sitting at the sitting in this mandala, and then here you can see the tiny Buddhas. So there are 1000 Buddhas, and in the outermost circle of this mandala are 20 Hindu deities. They are represented as a part of the Vajradhatu mandala. These are the names of the 37 deities of the main mandala of Vajradhatu, that is called Mahamandala, and the same deities are there in the next mandala that I showed you is the Samay mandala, and then they are in symbolic forms. And then the third mandala and the fourth mandala, there are slight variations of the forms. So I'm not going into those details. So this is just a drawing to show you that how in the central part of the mandala, the deities are sitting, and how there is a procedure of meditation, the relationship of the paramitas, bodhisattvas, and the Buddhas. Yeah. Relationship of the 16, there are 16 great bodhisattvas, we call them Mahabodhisattvas. So 1, 2, 3, 4, you can see there is one Buddha at the center, and in each circle, there is one Buddha and 4 bodhisattvas. This way, there are 16 bodhisattvas. These 16 bodhisattvas are said to be Mahabodhisattvas in the Buddhist pantheon. Now, as I showed you earlier, that when we start meditating, so either it is towards the outside to descending in the descending order or in the ascending order. If it is in the ascending order, then when the meditator, he starts meditating from this point and slowly goes up. And in this is the route is different. So these are the symbolic forms, as I said you, in the Mahamandala, all the deities are sitting in there as they can be represented. But in the Samay Mandala, the symbolic form, their symbols are like this. Here you can see more symbols of all the deities. These are the symbols of the deities which sit in the outermost section, as I showed you. So this is how this progress. This is the subtle assembly. These are all these Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, they sit with the Vajra behind them. So this is the difference. Here you can see that figures from the offering assembly, they are holding their symbols, their attributes. All the deities are represented with different attributes. So here you can see Vajra Tikshana, Vajra Teja, Vajra Sadhu. So here is the Buddha, fifth section of the 9 mandala, Vajradhatu mandala. Here you can see Vairochana of Vajradhatu mandala sitting at the center with the 4 Buddhas around him. So it is called 4 seal assembly. And finally, when we are in meditation, then we reach the highest level, and then it remains only one Buddha, and that is Vairochana. Vairochana is symbolizes, it's a solar aspect of the Buddha. So, and this is the Naya assembly, which is not a part of the Gobishingan, and this is from the Trailokya Vijaya mandala and Trailokya Vijaya, and the next is the Trailokya Vijaya Samay mandala. So, like this, so the first 4 of the sub mandalas can be elucidated in the light of the 4 mandalas explained by Buddha Gauḍīya in the fundamental commentary of Vajradhatu. So, Vajradhatu mandala, as I said, it has 37 deities. So when we compare them, so there are some differences, but in this conference, we do not have enough time to show the comparisons of the forms, the manifestations of each deity, the Buddhas, the Bodhisattvas, the Paramitas, the goddesses, all those they are there. So maybe we can talk about them sometime later. So graphic Vajradhatu mandala like this, it contains 9 mandalas as part of it. So as I showed you in this, that the central part of the graphic mandala is called Mahamandala. The big circle in the center is called Mahavajra Chakra. The 5 smaller moon circles. Just a minute. These are the smaller moon circles. They are called. They are. It denotes the 5 wisdom of the Vairochan, the deity Vajrojana. The smallest 5 moon circles inside each of them of the 5 moon circles means 5 wisdoms possessed by each of the 5 Buddhas. The 4 inner puja bodhisattvas, there are bodhisattvas of offering, because when we sit for doing any kind of puja, we use 5 things. Pushpa, Dhupa, Deepa, Gandha, and Naivedya in Sanskrit. Pushpa means flowers, Dhup means incense, Gandha means perfume, Pushpa, Dhupa, Deepa, and lamp, and something to eat, that is called Naivedya. So in China and in the Sino-Japanese tradition, they have all these things are brought by flying angels from the heaven to be offered to the deity whom we are worshipping. So they are called 5 puja bodhisattvas. So they are also there. So I think I conclude here that this mandala, Vajradhatu mandala, with all its 9 sections, still has been painted, drawn, and it is the deities are worshipped in all the Shingon monasteries, because it is one of the main mandala of the sect, Shingon sect. Shingon is the sect that is called Mantrayana sect, that brings India and Japan very, very close. So Kobo Daishi, in his memorial presenting a list of newly imported sutras and other items submitted to the Japanese emperor, he had done that in 806. He says that after new concentration, he received instruction in the mantra and mudras. When we do any kind of puja, then chanting and performing some kind of mudras, it plays a very, very important role. And this is what we find with all the deities in the Vajradhatu Mandala, and before that in the Gobushingan. And all these mantras are really fascinating and very important. Even the manifestations of all these deities are to be studied. It's an under-researched area. So let us hope that we can do some more work on this aspect of the mandala and its connection with the Sanskrit Tantra, the text Vasarva Tathagata Tattva Sangraha. So with these words, I thank you all, and once again I apologize for not being able to attend the conference yesterday, but I hope the best to the conference, and thank you once again. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the audience? Yeah, we have one question.
Thank you so much. Can you say how long does last the full initiation into this mandala, and how many approximately mantras and mudras are involved in it?
Oh, there are 37 deities in the mandala, and there are 37 deities, and all the deities are they have their mantras and mudras and symbols. So getting initiated, I don't know how much time does it need. I have to check it, because there is a huge work done on that part also, that how to be, how, because it was meant for initiation, of course, and for meditation, for yoga, for practicing. So it depends on, I think, individual also. Each individual has a different level of consciousness. So maybe my consciousness, my level of consciousness, maybe it is less than you. So maybe it takes me more time to reach that level, the highest level. So I think it depends. It's different from person to person.
I wanted to compare because I know about such complex initiations in Yoga Tantra. According to rules, the initiation must be fulfilled during one day. So they began at 3 a.m. because they had no time. They had they ate nothing, only tea was served sometimes. And there were so plenty of mudras that even the Vajracharya himself didn't know all of them because he practiced other tantra. And so he had a dozen a command of a dozen supporters. Each of them knew some sub list of mudras and showed to that Acharya, and he repeated the mudras. So it is the utmost complexity of the Yoga Tantras which caused me to ask you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. No more questions, probably. Was there anything else? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we come to the end of this session, and here in Pune we start celebrating Diwali. So this is why we will have online sessions only tomorrow. For those who will still remain with us, tomorrow morning we'll have one more session. As for the audience who is present here in person, we would like to thank them for the hospitality and for being present here, for sharing your views, and for the friendly attitude we have been creating. And here we finish this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jai Hind.
Jai Hind. Thank you. Hope we all have inner light on this Diwali.
Happy Diwali. Happy Diwali to everybody.
Namaste.
Shesha, okay?
Shashi.
Shashi, sorry.
Shashi.
I'm so sorry. But so I will connect with you later about our event in Delhi, okay? Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye.
sure. Yeah.
Happy Diwali.
I was a little confused the time that you sent me. Is it the Indian time or the Russian time?
It's Indian time. Pune time.
Oh, that was the confusion.
Don't worry, it's okay.
I thought
Thank you.
it's Russian time, so I mistook it.
Okay, thank you very much.
So
Bye.
see you soon in Delhi. Bye-bye.
See you in Delhi.
See you in Delhi.